For the last 20 years, the entire internet was basically built around one massive arrogant assumption that normal everyday users they would just never fight back. Like imagine building a multi-billion-dollar business model that entirely relies on people quietly accepting that their data is harvested every single time they click a button, only for users to just suddenly start fighting back. Like tracking companies are finally starting to lose control because normal people are simply tired of being watched, and the tools to fight back are finally becoming actually mainstream. It isn't even about being some crazy hacker or caring deeply about like abstract privacy tools being cool. It is literally just normal people being so annoyed by the constant creeping that they just click one button to try and block it. And the funniest part is that this is working well enough to make those actual tracking companies panic. Like hundreds of millions of people now use ad blockers or privacy focused tools to simply filter out the noise. Like they spent decades acting like nobody was ever going to bother looking underneath the hood of their software or question why every app just suddenly needs to track your location. But now the average person is just throwing a massive wrench directly into their money printing machine. It is honestly so funny to see where a bunch of internet users just deciding to block trackers is actively threatening the effortless invisible surveillance machine that the modern digital economy was built on. So to really understand why these companies are crashing out so hard, we kind of have to look at how we even got here in the first place. Because it wasn't always like this malicious. Like back in the early days, tracking was just a simple way to figure out how many people visited a website. But eventually someone realized that they could just make an astronomical amount of money by silently following you around the entire internet. And they pretty much started building these invisible trackers into absolutely everything, honestly to the point where reading like a simple blog like half the time just means your phone is pinging like 50 different companies to tell them what you're looking at. And the wildest part is that they genuinely just thought that this would just like last forever. Like they built this massive invisible surveillance network and just assumed that writing a 50-page terms of service agreement it would just simply be enough to keep people completely in the dark. But then slowly, well, the vibe started to shift. Like normal people started noticing that they would just like simply talk about wanting, for example, a new pair of shoes or search for something once, and then suddenly their entire feed, well, it would simply be flooded with the exact same thing. Like it went from being kind of helpful, just feeling incredibly creepy and invasive. And instead of just accepting it, well, people started fighting back in the most like casual way possible. Like it wasn't some highly organized like tactical rebellion. Like it was literally just millions of people getting just so fed up with constant monitoring that they just started downloading, like for example, like browser extensions, using private browsers, things like blocking trackers, and just refusing the default version of the web. Like privacy first browsers and things like built-in tracker protections are not like weird niche tools anymore. And because these companies built their empire on a fragile foundation of blind trust, well, the exact moment that people just stopped trusting them, the whole system just started to crash. And the panic from these tracking companies is reaching kind of an absolute like boiling point right now because the tools everyday people are using have gotten like pretty powerful, resulting in some of the most embarrassing corporate fumbles I've ever seen. Like there is this thing, for example, called a tracking pixel, which is basically just a tiny invisible dot hidden on websites that quietly watches exactly what you do. And for years, while massive companies were stuffing these pixels onto like normal things like streaming services, healthcare sites like shopping platforms, and even more, sending personal viewing habits, purchase histories, and things like even browsing activity straight back to the massive tech giants without most users knowing. But then like independent researchers, privacy advocates, lawsuits, and just everyday users, well, they started to catch on, and the fallout has been incredibly funny to watch. Like suddenly companies are getting dragged into things like class action lawsuits because they got caught with their hands completely in the cookie jar. And it goes just so much deeper than just blocking ads now. Like people are using things like VPNs and also private relays, including me, to mask their internet traffic, browser protections, to block tracking scripts, and also email aliases, for example, just to stop companies from connecting every single account back to the same identity. And also, I can't just forget Global Privacy Control, GPC, a feature that is getting some traction right now, which is essentially a universal signal built into your browser that automatically tells websites not to sell or share your data. And regulators in states like California and Colorado are forcing companies to take these browser signals seriously, meaning that users do not always have to manually dig through some cursed settings menu just to opt out anymore. Like, it is so satisfying to see the exact people who thought they were untouchable suddenly scrambling to try and explain themselves because normal people finally said enough is enough. What this realistically does mean, though, on the back end for the tech industry right now is a nightmare, because they are desperately trying to build things like clever workarounds to keep trying to track you, but users are finally making that harder than it used to be. Like, the moment these companies try to invent a new sneakier way to watch what you're doing online, well, privacy tools, browsers, regulators, lawsuits, the whole bunch, and also just user awareness start adapting around it. Like, it is basically a global game of cat and mouse, except now the tech giants are just no longer playing against a completely unaware public. And it isn't just about like stopping new trackers either. Like, people are actively attacking like things like the old databases. Users are so done with having their information bought and sold that they are now using data broker remover tools to mass delete their profiles from people's search sites and broker databases. Like, imagine being a data broker who makes money just selling personal profiles, and suddenly more people start realizing that they can actually demand like deletion, use removal services, and make your inventory harder to maintain. Like, the infrastructure of the internet is not magically fixed, and tracking is obviously not dead just yet, but the power dynamic is changing from a system of constant invisible surveillance to one where user resistance like actually matters. Like, they are losing their minds trying to adapt, and honestly, watching them struggle because people install like a free browser extension, turned on a privacy relay, use an alias, or just opted out of data selling is peak like comedy. Like, it proves that the data broker and tracking industries were heavily reliant on user ignorance, and the moment that ignorance started fading, well, their bottom line is kinda cooked. At the end of the day, when you step back and look at the whole big picture, what we are currently witnessing is a massive shift in the fundamental power dynamic of the internet. Like, the era of effortless invisible data harvesting, it is starting to crack, and it is entirely their own fault for being so unbelievably like greedy in the first place. Like, if they had just been reasonable, like, nobody would have cared enough to fight back. But they just pushed it so far that privacy tools became a normal everyday necessity. Like, you don't even have to be a tech genius to protect yourself anymore. Like, the tools are built into browsers, devices, extension apps, and even more that normal people can actually access. Like, ad blockers are no longer like a niche tool for like computer nerds. Like, private browsers are not just like for paranoid people, and email aliases are not just for hackers. Like, these things are now like more mainstream, like resistance tools being used by regular people who are just exhausted by the modern web. So yeah, that's the first video. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.